Have you seen the drama unfolding in the Democratic Party? Polls showing a widening lead for Donald Trump among male and minority voters has sent the party into a panic to the point that they had to bring Barack Obama out of retirement to help out. And of course, Bill Maher wasn't going to hold back on poking fun at the party for it, but it's a conversation that still holds a lot of substance we need to explore, so subscribe to the channel and take a look at this before we dive in.
It's 25 days before the election, and I gotta say, it's not looking that great for the Democrats. I mean, this is not a good sign, you know, when you have an African-American candidate. You probably shouldn't be having to shore up your support among black men, but that's what's going on. Tim Walz is headlining a voter engagement event tonight with black men. Who better to connect with young black men than Tim Walz? Because apparently Michael Bublé was unavailable. Meanwhile, Kim Kardashian's like, hello. But no, Obama even came out yesterday to scold. I mean, he was scolding. Well, I don't know. The last month at the convention, he was no scolding. Now he's scolding.
That tells you something, doesn't it? For too long, none of this petty political sloganeering was even necessary when it came to minority communities for the Democratic Party. And yet the polls coming out in the past few months have seemed to put a pin in the brief euphoria we saw when Kamala Harris took over the party ticket a few months ago. Of the total battleground states right now, Donald Trump has established a lead over Kamala Harris, even though it's narrow at the moment. But take a look at the weekly change in these states, and Donald Trump has jumped up significantly in all of them, and that means a victory for Kamala. It's starting to look as elusive as the Democrats now as it did for Joe Biden. But that's just one part of the worries for the Democrats, because their most comfortable voter base among the African-American community is starting to break away as well. And this isn't even a short-term thing. In 2016, for example, Donald Trump received around 8% of the African-American vote in the country. In 2020, that figure was 12%, and now, well over 17% of African Americans report in polls that they'd vote for Donald Trump this time. That's not a coincidence, and neither is it an isolated incident. It's a flashing warning sign to the Democrats that there's something seriously wrong with their messaging to the minority voters in the country, and you know what? The answer to that can be found in the response they're taking to it. Simply put, the party is trying to wrestle with this new problem around the lines of identity politics, which is exactly what started this problem in the first place. Barack Obama just had to come out of the woodworks and literally scold African-American voters for not gathering enough enthusiasm in their community for Kamala Harris. Just take a look at this.
I'm going to go ahead and just speak some truths, if you don't mind. Because my understanding, based on reports I'm getting from campaigns and communities, is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. I've got a problem with that because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly now, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that.
It's petty because Obama just managed to play politics onto identity traits at the same time, being race and gender. And did you notice something else as well? Nowhere in this awkward monologue while Obama pleads for votes do you even see him give a reason why. I mean, it would be one thing if he was actually just laying out the list of reasons and achievements of the Democrats in the last 4 years of the minority community. But that's not what this was about. It's an unabashed embrace of identity politics to the point that it's all they seem to be left with. Of course, you can be sure that it's more of a sign of panic, which means that the current Republican ticket is watching this very closely. If you break down many of the polls in swing states by their finer demographic, you realize that a lot of leads are dominated by a single group of people. For example, in areas where the Democrats lead by a margin, you see it driven by women and minority voters, and in areas where Republicans lead, usually men are one causing this shift. That means even within swing states, there are voter swing bases, and it's clear that reaching out to one of those swing voter demographics, being the African American vote, has been a chief total of the Republicans in the last few years. Here's how J.D. Vance responded to Barack Obama's sad plea for votes last week.
Senator Vance, in Pittsburgh on Thursday, former President Barack Obama admonished black men for being hesitant about voting for Kamala Harris. I was wondering if you could contrast your approach to hesitant voters and how you tried to earn them over.
You know, first of all, I don't believe, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, whether you agree with Donald Trump or disagree with him, I don't believe in hectoring voters. I believe in persuading voters. Your support is not something I'm given or something I'm owed. It's something you got to go out there and work for. So one, I just don't like the tone of going in. I mean, look, the better question for Barack Obama or anybody to ask is not why black men, it's not how dare you not vote for Kamala Harris. It's maybe they're thinking about voting for Donald Trump because they're sick of being censored, they're sick of being told what to do, and they're sick of not being able to afford the American dream. Maybe that's why we're getting a lot more black voters.
That is so well put. It's because over the past several decades of political complacency, the Democratic Party seems to have developed a kind of entitlement to the minority vote that was just waiting to be broken. Not just that, they overplayed their hand in the identity politics, instilling their voter base a sense of victimhood that they had just grown tired of. All that was needed was someone to give them the opposite message for one, and the dam would start to crack. That's what the Republicans have done with clever messaging in the last 8 years, and by the way, the African-American voter base is just one small aspect of that. The modern left has been doing something similar on a much grander scale, which is between men and women. Bill Maher, in particular, has often been surprised at why young men are gravitating towards a character like Trump, all while forgetting the vacuum of masculinity that the left-dominated modern culture has left.
This bro.
You to me?
No, I did not look at
Of course, if you went to me.
It's a big issue in this election is that Trump is going for the bro vote. I mean, obviously, there's a huge gender gap. And, you know, I've done this one to death, too. But, you know, someone has to explain to me why people who love Trump see him as this icon of masculinity, this man who I used you know, who's just never shuts up under 2 pounds of bronzer and always complaining and whining. Why do you see this as an epitome of masculinity, and is it good if it is?
I think that the gender issue that Democrats have is much broader than Donald Trump specifically. I mean, Trump also, there's the narrative, he's a billionaire who's married to a supermodel, who's become president on the first try, who, you know, I mean, look, people can say whatever they want about it, but there is that component of an alpha male who's ultra successful and is probably about to become leader of the free world again.
Bill really had got it reversed. It's not that Trump is any icon of masculinity for these young disenfranchised men. It's that men are frantically clawing at anyone that can give them at least a semblance of pride in their masculinity, rather than being derided as the tyrants in a patriarchal system, as the left often does. And if these men are overlooking the many flaws of Donald Trump to do that, then it's the left that needs to do a bit of introspection to understand why it's left that space open in the first place. But let me know in the comments how you felt about this exchange, because it really does feel like a few important demographics could end up defining an election as close as this.